Donald Trump is in North Carolina today, just one day after he received his first classified intelligence briefing. National security has been a hallmark issue for the Trump campaign since its inception.
However, just hours before the briefing was set to begin, Trump told reporters that he doesn't trust the country's intelligence officials. So here with us now is Mike Baker. He's a former CIA covert operations officer and the president of Diligence LLC to talk a little bit about this, the process. So here we have Donald Trump getting this briefing. Tell us sort of what sort of information would be made available to him and who's he talking to?
Right. Well, first of all, it's not the highest level classification of security. This is not as if he's now receiving the Presidential Daily Brief, the PDB. That's an extremely sensitive document. The president receives that every day. Analysts from the agency and then members of NSC are there. This is more, think in terms of general assessments of current situations around the world, general assessments of world leaders, analysis of current threats and crises around the world, an assessment of the current status of the war on terror. So it's still sensitive information. It's still classified. They need clearances to get that information. And they also are briefed on the responsibilities involved in handling information like this. They sign a document basically saying they understand their responsibilities and the importance of keeping this information confidential. But it is not the highest level of information at this stage of the game.
And Mike, it's meant to be apolitical, right? In other words, if you share information with one candidate, you're supposed to share it with the other candidate, the same information. And even if one candidate asks specifically for something and you give it to them, you also have to give that to the other.
Absolutely. The intent is to ensure that you're not favoring one client over the other. So candidate, okay, client. But the idea being that they are receiving the same exact briefing, the same level of classification, because you could imagine what would happen if one candidate was receiving more sensitive information, had more insight. Now, they wouldn't disclose that, but during a debate, that would give them an advantage.
I would think, though, being former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton already has a bit of an advantage and more information that Donald Trump could have. I mean, there's no way to sort of equal them out in terms of that type of information, right?
No, it's a very good point. And what she really has in terms of an advantage is understanding the process, understanding the context of intelligence collection, understanding how this is done, understanding what that looks like from the street collection of intelligence all the way through the process of analyzing it, editing it, what ends up in a document like the Presidential Daily Brief. So that's a real advantage. And I think it shows in the comments that Donald Trump made prior to his briefings when he said, not so much. I don't trust some of these intel officers or members of the intel community so much. That's a kind of a striking statement, because my belief is that perhaps he doesn't fully understand. He's a smart guy, but perhaps he doesn't fully understand that the intel community collects intelligence, right? And they analyze intelligence. But the tasking for that intelligence, setting priorities, and then making policy decisions, that sits with the president and their chosen national security team. That's not the job of the intel community.
That's a very good point and a very powerful clarification, because I think, as you point out, that he was sort of talking about the end results, what we've done as a country, as what the Obama administration has done with the intelligence gathering. He may have disagreements with that, but the actual nuts and bolts of gathering that, you're a former intelligence officer, it's hard to blame the guys who are out there every day doing it and collecting this data.
Absolutely. And we should all be very, very happy that we're in a country where the intel apparatus is apolitical. I mean, I know some people won't believe that because, they'll feature films and beach books and they, show that, the intel community's out there trying to create one world government, but that's not the way it works. Some countries it is, and it's disastrous and has some very nefarious effects. But here in the U.S., the intel community marches to whatever the White House, the administration at that time tells them to do. So.
Now, moving forward, will there be more briefings if there is a particularly sensitive thing that pops up internationally? Will the two candidates be briefed again? How does that go?
Yeah, this is not a one-off.
Okay.
So there'll be, I don't know the ins and outs of the number of briefings that they'll receive, but typically they receive more than just one briefing. And this will go on up to the debates in particular. But it's a fairly standard process. There's nothing really new about it. It happens in a secure facility, in this case, FBI headquarters. Again, each candidate's allowed to bring 2 individuals with them, and that helps them to kind of analyze what they're hearing, helps them to put things into context to the degree that they can. You have to hope that those people are very well experienced.
Mike, before I let you go, I want to get your take on what happened earlier this month where 50 Republican national security officials signed a letter saying that Trump and his proposals are a threat to the country's safety. Given your experience abroad as an intelligence officer, do you agree with that assessment?
You need, when you're president, you need to be disciplined. And when you're talking about national security and foreign policy issues, you need to be consistent and send clear messages. Mixed messages, inconsistency, a lack of discipline is a very bad thing in that world. And it creates chaos amongst our allies and amongst those that are not aligned with our interests. What the members of that community, and I don't disagree with them in sort of the theoretical sense, that we haven't necessarily seen a level of discipline that they would like to see. And I know it sounds like I'm parsing my words very carefully, but we're talking about the President of the United States here. This is a very, very serious matter. This is not to be taken lightly for both sides.
Right.
And so when we talk about the ability to handle information, I understand what they're saying about Donald Trump, but I also understand what people say about his opponent, Hillary Clinton. And we're a very large country. And we've ended up with these two candidates.
I think you're right, and I think the distinction is made. There are people who say, look, what happened in Benghazi is clearly a failure of leadership from Secretary Clinton when she was Secretary of State at the time, and because of that reason, we don't trust her to be Commander-in-Chief. And then you have others who say, look, Donald Trump has advocated, telling soldiers to commit war crimes, and he's advocated giving nuclear weapons to Japan. And some people say, well, look, does he know that the United States drafted the Japanese Constitution that prohibits them from having nuclear weapons? And I think that's the...
There is that little thing.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's absolutely true. And again, it comes down to a concern. People who work in national security, people in the military, people in intelligence, because you're faced with this every day, you become hypersensitive to the problems that could be created by a lack of control, a lack of discipline, a lack of understanding of the complexities of what we're dealing with. We have more crises right now and flashpoints overseas than we've had in a very, very long time. We're facing more complex issues in terms of our relationships with Iran, with Russia, with China than we've seen in a long time. So people need to take this extremely seriously.
All right, Mike Baker, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.